the custom inspector came out and said, "What are you hauling?" And he said, "Bagged seed wheat." And the inspector said, "Well, I have to see that." So they went out and he rolled back the tarp and they looked, and the inspector said, "Well, it can't be that big of a bag." And Tom said, "Well, it doesn't say that in the legislation." And the inspector said, "It will." And they seized his truck and they kept it until they changed the legislation. How long did it take you to get the truck back, Tom? 9 months?
Only 2, and cost is a few bucks for the impound.
Yeah, 2 months. And Tom's had quite a life of activism, and I guess we better get Marc. Marc Morano is presenting by Zoom. He was in Egypt at COP. What are we at? COP 27, watching all our elites spend our money and spew CO2 everywhere. But I imagine we'll get to him in about 1 minute. I want to tell one more Tom Jackson story. He was at protesting the Canadian Wheat Board outside of the building in Winnipeg, and with a big sign like the Wheat Board are communists, like they need to go. And this scruffy looking character came up to him and said, "Oh, I bet you'd like to blow that building up and off the face of the earth." And Tom said, "No, I just wanted to change the marketing legislation." "Well," he said, "I've got some dynamite back at my apartment. We could blow that place off the face of the earth before dark if you want to." And he said, "No, I just want to change the Wheat Board legislation." Anyway, he said, "Well, if you change your mind, I've got the dynamite. We could do that today or tomorrow, whatever you like." So anyway, this is before cell phones. When the guy's gone, Tom goes to the payphone. He phones the police and said, "I just had some crazy nut here wanting to give me dynamite to blow up the Wheat Board building. Like, do you want to come and interview me?" And they said, "No, that's all right." He said, "Should I come down and make a statement?" "No, that's all right." And then you wonder, okay, like, had he offered to take the dynamite, he'd still be in jail. And then my friend Alan says, stories like that are why less people cry when a cop dies. Like, it really does make you like cynical at times. But in any event, we didn't come here to be cynical about the police, but I think we are trying to be aware of how many like elites we have that are trying to control us. And we got Marc ready to go. Marc I think we've got a little bit of time because we had Marc scheduled for a question and answer, but he's actually in the air on the way home from Egypt. So let's play his 2 little 30-second clips, and then we'll play his presentations. Does that sound like it'll work, David? So here's Marc Morano.
Hello, Freedom Talk. This is Marc Morano at the UN Climate Summit in Egypt. Sorry I couldn't join you in person, but I think you'll enjoy this. I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of the Climate Summit. Here you see some of the corporate partners behind me. Everyone from Microsoft to Siemens to Bank of America, all the big corporations who want to sell you out. So there you have it, climate reparations. They're demanding it at the UN Climate Summit here in Egypt. So I appreciate it. And now we're going to go to my presentation on the Great Reset. And everyone's here. World Health Organization is here. And they are here because they're trying to morph climate into a public health issue and morph COVID into climate. I'll have more on that as well. Looking forward to it. Hello, Canada. This is Marc Morano joining you. Just dropped my stuff live from Egypt. I'm in Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt, at the United Nations Climate Summit in Sharm el Sheikh, and I've been here all week. Today is my last day. I've got my colonial oppressor hat on. I got already, we've been out here in the desert. I've been out here with Craig Rucker and Peter Murphy of CFAT, Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow. Joe Biden is arriving today. I believe Nancy Pelosi was here yesterday. For some reason, Justin Trudeau decided not to attend. But behind me, you see the town of Sharm el Sheikh and the Red Sea, which was a great swim, by the way. We got to go out there. I cut my foot on some rocks or corals, and I ended up needing attention on that. I also tripped while I was out here running, and I also have some other issues that you would expect to have in Egypt. So it's been a great trip so far, all the perils of international travel. So I'm going to give you a quick update at what has been happening here at the United Nations Climate Summit this week. I can take the hat off here, and I'm sweating like a just unbelievably. It's brutal desert heat, as you might imagine. You are getting the authentic experience there in Western Canada of what it's like to be here at the United Nations Climate Summit. So let me share my screen. I was going to play you some of our adventures Host has disabled screen sharing. Well, hopefully we'll get that taken care of. That's a technical glitch. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you different videos, and I'm going to show you some of the photos that we've taken. And then I'm going to do a PowerPoint, a little different than I did when I talked to you guys last March or April. I'm going to talk exclusively about the Great Reset, because that is alive and well at this conference. So let me get myself set up here. Okay, here we go. I believe I'm sharing a screen now. And 1 second, please. But I don't know what just happened. Customize profile. Here we go. Okay. Let's start out here. This is the picture. As you can see, we rode here on camel. I wanted to find a low emission animal to go on. And I thought, hey, this is great. It's not an internal combustion engine. There's all kinds of issues with riding camels. Just like cows, you've got burping and belching and flatulence. And there have been studies saying that camels help global warming, and you can also fight global warming with camels. But we got to do this at the world famous pyramids just outside of Cairo. In fact, here is my video. Let's take a look of me riding off into the United Nations Climate Summit. We're heading to the United Nations Climate Summit, and this is the way we chose to go. See you there soon. We had a lot of fun, and now I'm going to show you some of the coverage that we did. And it was, and as I say here, I mentioned this, camels cause global warming, and they also cure global warming. They also die from warming, or they can die from cold. There's a lot of issues they don't have there. So there was also this climate clock that was here in Sharm el-Sheikh. And by the way, I'll get to how I renamed Sharm el-Sheikh, the town here in a moment. But the Egyptian clock is ticking down, and let's take a listen here, and I'll make the screens full size. Listen to this. Here I am at the United Nations Climate Summit in Egypt with the climate tipping point clock ticking away behind me. So that is a clock that is ticking down, and here's some more. Here's another picture of this clock. 6 years, 257 days, 2 hours, 3 minutes, and 46 seconds. Let's continue. This was at a youth climate activist event. I interviewed some of the youth activists, and they are basically calling for open socialism in order to save climate change. So let's take a listen. They're at the youth climate activist headquarters at the United Nations Climate Summit. Behind me, you see all the kids activists who are here to put pressure on the UN to make governments solve climate, allegedly. So what happened was the youth had multiple events here this week. There was even an event with kids as young as elementary school, and they stood up and they said, we should be in school, we should be out on the swings, we shouldn't be here saving the planet and trying to urge adults. To my answer to that would be, yes, get the hell out of here, go back to the playground, go play on swings, enjoy your childhood. We don't need you here. No one needs to be at this insane conference. So this was the clock, 2 days later, 6 years, 255 days, 2 hours, 6 seconds. And it just kept, with the odd thing about this countdown clock, this climate clock at the UN summit, it just kept reducing the time. I got this eerie feeling that kept welling up inside of me like, time's running out. We only have a little bit of time to go full Marxist, to go full Great Reset, or we're all going to die. We've got to give up every freedom we have to save the climate. That's literally the message. So I wanted to tell Americans listening and Canadians, sleep well. The Biden administration, huge presence here. Joe Biden himself, administration officials. The slogan at the American base here was, we are going to take the most aggressive action ever to confront the climate crisis. So if anyone had a doubt that Joe Biden is going to change the weather through government legislation, doubt no more. All right, continuing on. The U.S. Center, there's a picture of the U.S. Center. I'm going a little fast here. Now, this is interesting. Corporations are eager to sell you out. These are the main partners of the United Nations Climate Summit. Let's take a look at who's bringing us this Great Reset, this United Nations Climate Agenda. Hey, Vodafone, Microsoft, Infinity, Siemens, IBM, Coca-Cola, Google. Isn't this just wonderful? They care so much about the climate that they literally want a bigger monopolistic takeover, big corporations, big government colluding to bring you fascism. Isn't this wonderful? And they were all over the place, all of these booths. And of course, the World Health Organization, we'll get to that. Now, In case you didn't know, there's something called ecocide, and you're guilty of it. Don't look so smug sitting there in your audience up in Canada. What is ecocide? Well, it's what's happening to our planet. Mass damage and destruction. There's a goal there at this United Nations Summit to make ecocide an international crime. So get ready for that. Now, African leaders, and typically at these UN summits, Africa has the biggest turnout and delegation because they're promised climate cash. Also, all the developing world nations, South America, Asia, they will show up because they think they're going to get money. Now, here's something. Chad was here, Rwanda, Democratic Republic of Congo, Niger, Malawi, and multiple other countries. And the African Union was there. And they're actually, what's sad about this is in many respects, depending on how this plays out, these are leaders taking money not to develop, to literally sell out the populations that they represent in order to comply with net zero. So I also got to go on Marc Stein's show multiple times this week. He's now in Great Britain. That's a screenshot from Marc Stein's show. There I am with Marc Stein. I might be able to play a clip of that, but you can get that at Climate Depot if you want to see that. Now, interestingly enough, of all the places here at the UN, two groups of people were wearing masks. The youth delegation were all primarily masked up for some reason, and China Pavilion. You had to mask up when entering. So I guess it's another psych-op COVID theater from the Chinese delegation. Save the children. The climate crisis is a child's right issue. If you can't convince adults, scare the hell out of kids and make kids pester adults. So, other thing happening here, and you probably heard this in the news, we demand climate reparations. All the developing world countries, they want to deny the entire industrial revolution. I'll repeat that. They want to deny it. They want to turn it into pure evil. So that's one of the things that I was dealing with at the summit. And here's a funny clip. These are Egyptian drivers, and you can just watch it. You really don't need the audio, although I do, but it's just Egyptian drivers. As you land off the plane, these are all private vehicles to pick up people. And this is whether you arrive commercial, private jet. This is at the Sharm el-Sheikh airport in Egypt. World Health Organization was there, still trying to morph COVID and climate. Remember, World Health has declared climate the greatest public health threat, existential threat. They want to use COVID lockdowns as a model to handle climate. So they, of course, are all over this climate summit. And this is just a little chart in case some of you need a reminder. Atmospheric CO2. Let's go all the way back to the Rio Earth Summit, 1992, and then look at that. Copenhagen, Paris, Glasgow, and Sharm el-Sheikh. Nothing has happened. Carbon dioxide keeps going up, 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 and away. We're all in. Pelosi leads congressional delegation. So Nancy Pelosi is here. Now this is interesting. This is an article I did. There's Michael Crichton, who said that climate change and environmentalism is the new religion for urban atheists. And he couldn't have been more right. Here at the United Nations, Mount Sinai, not very far away from where we are. We're in the Sinai desert here. Religious leaders are scheduled to gather at Mount Sinai to issue the climate commandments, a new 10 commandments based on climate change and climate justice. So that ought to bring a warm feeling to your heart. That's happening here. Here's another headline for you. Mount Sinai preparing to host Global Summit, a new global religion. So they're being very busy here doing this. And this is actually their quote from their report. We return to Sinai in a movement of repentance and questioningly seek a new vision for humanity and its endangered species. We seek to receive and amplify a message. And this goes on. They're having a climate repentance ceremony near Mount Sinai, here at the UN Climate Summit. And let's take a moment of silence. I know you're all there. You're all eager to hear this update, but I think it's important. Maybe we should do a climate repentance moment of silence. To the crazy earth gods here at the United Nations Summits, not only are we not sorry for the Industrial Revolution, but we want you to get that bleep out of this town and disband this entire process. That's my repentance, that we ever allowed this sham process to occur in the first place. So you can get your climate repentance and shove it where the bleep, bleep, bleep. They're coming up with a new Bible, an ecological Bible. One of the people here. So this is full of this. So here's it is. I've renamed the town And I think this should be the official name of this UN Climate Summit. It's not Sharm el-Sheikh, it's Sharm el-Sheikh Down. And that should be the official name. You could even tweak it to say Sham el-Sheikh Down. But that is really what this is. Climate funds, Al Gore here begging to pay, wants businesses to invest $4 trillion a year to fight climate change. Let me repeat, $4 trillion per year. So, on that front, I was going to show you a couple other things, and I was going to talk to you a little bit about the Great Reset here. And for some reason, I can't move this bar. There we go. Okay. So, climate trace. This is something to be very afraid. This United Nations Climate Summit has been heralded by Al Gore and now Google at this summit. They're promoting this climate trace event. Now, we all love track and trace, right? Remember in Australia where if you went to a grocery store and you happened to be 6 feet of someone who tested positive and you had no idea, you could have people visit your door and forcibly take you to a quarantine camp for 2 weeks and you would be held against your will. It was all for public safety. Well, guess what? Al Gore loves that so much, he is now doing what he calls climate trace with Google, satellite database to track individual emitters of CO2. Keep in mind, they already have MasterCard and the United Nations teaming up to monitor your carbon footprint. World Economic Forum, the forces of the Great Reset, love the idea of shutting down the ability of spend money on your Visa when you hit your CO2 max. You want a hamburger? You want to buy some tobacco? A cigar or something? You want to buy gas for your car? You want to eat meat? Sorry, you've already maxed out your CO2 carbon footprint. How are they going to enforce this? Well, Al Gore and Google, how is that for a partnership made in literally Dante's Inferno, in hell? This is my quotes on this. This is the climate activists, the United Nations, they're digging their claws at every aspect of industrial society, monitoring and penalizing producers. Humans inhale oxygen, we exhale carbon dioxide. We are now potentially being able to be monitored by Al Gore and Google. Big Al is watching you. Big Al Gore. They're demonizing emissions to create a net zero world, and this is the key, where human prosperity and economic growth are evil. And this is what, again, we can laugh all we want at this summit, and I've done my best to laugh and to be prepared for all this, but there is some serious stuff. This is really a totalitarian advance that I haven't seen in my years covering these United Nations Climate Summit. Now, another headline and another story I did, which you need to be aware of, John Kerry at the UN Climate Summit says the climate strategy should be modeled on COVID vaccine rollout. So he was at an event with the World Economic Forum. Yes, they're here at the UN Summit. And yes, John Kerry's here. John Podesta was here. And they're talking about literally using that template for COVID for climate change. So let me see what else I got here, and then I'm going to go into the Great Reset. Nancy Pelosi mobbed by photographers like a rock star. This is worth mentioning here, and I'll see this is worth mentioning. This is Joe Nova, and I thought this was fantastic. Witch Doctor Al Gore wields windmills to stop storms and end coal's culture of death. Gore recycles the overproof grade hellfire of centuries past. And this is important. This is Joe Nova. She's an Australian. She's not at the summit, but she wrote an analysis based on Al Gore's speeches here at the summit this week. And here's what she wrote. Gore, like a witch doctor, pagan preacher, the only thing Al Gore recycles is the hellfire of past centuries. Al will stop storms if only everyone will do as he says and invest in his climate asset fund. For Al Gore comes armed with windmills that stop rain bombs and solar panels that hold back the sea. Like medieval cult leaders, superstitious rain dancers, and healers with magical cures, the modern climate witch doctors have satellites and simulations, but run on the same old formula since time began. Fear, smear, demons, magic, all prophecies are ambiguous. Nothing they say can be falsified. I can't think of a better summary of this United Nations Climate Summit than Joe Nova, and I posted that at Climate Depot, so if you want to go over and read that, well worth a read. The other thing, and I think I have to show you this, and then we'll go to the presentation, is Craig Rucker and I got arrested doing a protest. We decided, hey, why should the climate activists have all the fun with all of these super gluing themselves to statues and everything else. So we decided that we were going to do our little protest here in Egypt. And let me see if I can find it. Okay. And this is this was a lot of fun because we got on Marc Stein, Great Britain News TV with this. Also, we're getting on Fox News with this. This is great stuff. We're going to show you that clip right now. This is Craig Rucker and I going to the museum in Egypt with ancient artifacts, super gluing our hands, and then even being let out by security. Roll tape.
CPAC is here at the COP27 conference in Egypt. We're inspired by the Just Stop Oil protest, and we're going to stage something similar of our own.
Yes, we've had enough with this billionaire-funded, Hollywood-funded, just say no to oil campaigns. Our message is the opposite. Just say no to governments trying to solve climate change. It's the greatest threat to humanity. No net zero. No green energy mandates. No net zero. Okay, now you notice there at the end we were handcuffed a la AOC. Now AOC was recently detained in Washington, D.C., and she put her hands behind her back to do the fake handcuffs. So we thought we could do it too. We've had enough of this, and we are going to fight back. So now, let us go to my presentation. I'm going to do a quick presentation here just to give you the basics of what the Great Reset is. And I think this is going to be eye-opening to those of you who haven't. And of course, I have a new book out on this. One second, let me start at the top. This is really now what's taken over from these UN climate summits. It's important to mention this. I started coming to these summits 20 years ago this year. In other words, it was 2002, Johannesburg, South Africa, UN Climate Summit. And you'd get a very different world. All the radical activists, it was a lot of just earth worshippers would show up. And there's still that, but now it's been replaced by bureaucrats in the corporate world, the global corporate world, and powerful politicians and celebrities and big bankers. Why? Because it's all been corporatized. They're all colluding now with big government to literally crush us and remake society in what their own phrase is the radical transformation. So here we go. UN Climate Summit, Great Reset tries to bypass democracy. So this is my presentation. I will do this, and then I'm going to have to sayonara because I gotta get out of here. I think I'm a wanted man at this point because I do have one story to tell you. This is important. I showed up, this is about 2 nights ago, went to the media tent for the first time, and lo and behold, who was there but the Associated Press lead reporter, Seth Borenstein. And I had been fighting this guy for 15 years through reports and through the Senate, where I worked for Senator James Inhofe, and he's really the most embarrassing climate reporter out there. He's a pure propagandist. Anyway, he did not like my work. I went up and shook his hand. I'd never met him before. And he shook my hand, and I told him my name, and he got so offended. And I mean, there were like 3 or 4 other people there. And I'll wait for this plane to cross. That could actually be Craig Rucker right now heading out of Egypt. He beat me out. He's hightailing it out as well, and I'll be on the next plane following him. But Seth Borenstein, the Associated Press, decades-long lead global warming reporter, went bonkers and lost his cool, started screaming at me, called me a liar, a deceiver, anti-science, someone who denies science, rejects science. He said he never would have shaken my hand if he had known that. He can't believe what a loathsome human being I am. He went on and on and on and on. He said the only person worse than myself was junkscience.com Steve Malloy. Now, I was a little upset because Steve beat me out on that one, but hey, Steve ranked number 1. I was actually talking to my daughter on the phone, and she said, "Dad, are you okay? Who's yelling at you like that?" It was funny because I had the earpiece in. And this is what happens when one lone climate skeptic shows up at a UN summit. You have the media meltdown. And of course, if you check my Twitter feed, and Steve Malloy wrote about this, there's a whole account of what happened and some of the quotes. It was very silly. But anyway, I digress. Let's continue here. The UN Climate Summit. Oh, one other story, and I don't know why it didn't show up in the thread. There was a activist here at the entrance of the summit with a sign that said, "Climate deniers deserve the death penalty." So that's the kind of welcome we got when we came here at Sharm El Shakedown. So continuing on, Great Reset. Here we go. My book is out. I think I talked a little bit about, actually I didn't talk about this as it wasn't out. This was released August 30. Great Reset, Global Elites and the Permanent Lockdown. It's heavily emphasis on COVID, climate, the morphing, abuse emergency power. I'll give you a little rundown of what it's about. It's not a book you're going to want to miss. This could be your guide as you deal with the Justin Trudeau's Canada. And of course, my previous book was The Green New Deal, why the Green New Deal is even worse than you think, green fraud. World Economic Forum's Great Reset. This is what they are literally trying to do. And they announced this formally in June of 2020. The word's been around since at least 2014. So, and now I can't change screens. Hold on, there we go. Okay, the pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world. That is Klaus Schwab literally laying the foundation June of 2020. I don't know why, and this is not letting me turn again. Okay. Klaus Schwab, founder, executive, every country from the US to China must participate, every industry must be transformed. We need a great reset of capitalism. And keep in mind, the word capitalism is a dirty word now, and even among us free marketers, you gotta really consider it, because they now label, meaning they, the mainstream media, these groups, they say Bill Gates is a capitalist, Klaus Schwab is a capitalist, even Prince Charles is a capitalist, or King Charles. They've redefined the word now to basically someone who's a fascist, corporatist, monopolist, and that's capitalism. So I try to say free market now. The Great Reset, World Economic Forum, very open about what it is. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Of course, someone else will own something and they'll be even happier. Whatever you want will be delivered by drone. You'll rent it. Hey, you need a blender, you need a TV, you rent it. You don't want to own anything. Of course, there's still going to be that top echelon who will own everything. The U.S. won't be the world's leading superpower, and that's one of their stated goals. There'll be a global price on carbon that will make fossil fuels history. Oh, let's put a huge price. Let's just get rid of fossil fuels. Fossil fuels have been nothing but trouble for the earth. 1 billion people will be displaced by climate change. And meat will be an occasional treat, not a staple, for the good of our health. And they're doing that right now. They're doing it left and right. Polluters will have to pay to emit carbon dioxide. The Great Reset happening now, 2022. Our First Amendment free speech rights are being collapsed through corporate government collusion. And remember, big tech censorship is government censorship. When you guys had the apps raising money for the freedom convoys, that was government censorship, not, oh, they violated the terms of service of the app. Yeah, right. When you guys had money cut off, when Justin Trudeau had the bankers collude to cut off access to your own funds or insurance companies, that was not, oh, the private sector could do what it wants because they're a private company. That was government censorship, government fascism. Just let's use the proper terms. Our energy, so our First Amendment rights, our free speech rights are being collapsed. Our current energy system is being intentionally collapsed. Our transportation system is being collapsed, and this comes with the banning of the internal combustion engine. No one voted for it. It was issued through executive orders and then trigger laws and then unelected boards. And banks now in Australia aren't going to be giving out car loans. World Bank wants to stop funding automakers any money to even produce gas-powered cars. So they're creating intentional car shortages a la Cuba, a la East Germany. It's not far-fetched to think you'll be on a waiting list for an electric car like people were in East Germany in the 1980s waiting for the crappy East German Trabant. Our ability to own homes and property is being intentionally collapsed. High-yield agriculture is being intentionally collapsed, going after nitrogen fertilizer, high yields. We're seeing this in the Netherlands, Canada, Australia, coming to the U.S. They're also promoting insect eating, banning meat, ability to choose meat eating, and they're giving it, forget about the fake meat, vegetable burger. The lab-grown meat is what you should be afraid of. Grown in a lab, Bill Gates funded. They're like amorphous blobs coming at you from the invasion of the body snatchers. They get stem cells from a cow or a sheep, and they get the fetal blood from the same animal. They put them in a lab, they grow them for a few months, and then the World Economic Forum brags you can, after you prepare them and do the right texture and food dyes, you can print your meat print your meat on 3D printers, print several ounces, several kilograms a minute. Frightening stuff. Justin Trudeau, you know this pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. Al Gore, I think it's time for a great reset, so this time to fix the climate crisis. John Kerry, World Economic Forum's have to play front and center for a role in refining the Great Reset to deal with climate change. Socialist fund. This is, why should the Soviets have all the fun? 1932. This was Socialist Economy to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President of the United States. He had two books, 1932 and a 1944 book, I believe. And in it, he literally laid out an early vision of the Great Reset. Control of banking, credit, control of energy sources, control of transportation, railway, highway, government control of agriculture production, state control of communication and propaganda. And at the end of his 1932 book, A New Deal, he said, why should the Soviets have all the fun remaking the world? To wit, I've updated that to be, why should the Chinese have all the fun remaking the world? Because remember, instead of when we gave China this great economic power and allowed them to gut our industrial base, everyone said, oh, when China gets money, they'll become more like us and like a free country in the West. No, we became more like China, Chinese social credit system. The long shadow of Vladimir Lenin, worse is better. This was the phrase he used during the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. The phrase worse is better, or the worse the better, was his slogan. That's why you cheer on chaos and destruction in order to impose your brand of totalitarianism. That's why they love supply chain deficits, inflation, lockdowns. It creates chaos, and then they can get even more government control. And we're seeing that now. There's calls to nationalize our energy system, calls to nationalize the food system, because the free market failed, of course, as government shut it down. Copy China's response to COVID-19, the World Health Organization, a tool of both Bill Gates and China. This is how we ended up, all the free world following China's example during COVID. Neil Ferguson, the climate modeler, if China had not done the lockdowns, this year would have been very different. It's a communist one-party state. We couldn't get away with a lockdown in Europe. And then Italy did it, and we realized we could. Oh, it just brings such warmth. We can follow Chinese communist model. Isn't that wonderful? The once free West is now literally copying what China's one-party fool. They've lusted after it for decades. This is Tom Friedman, new pages of the New York Times. One-party autocracy can just impose politically difficult but critically important policies needed to move a society forward. It's not an accident that China is committed to overtaking the U.S. in electric cars and solar power. See, all we need is dictatorship and totalitarianism, and we can go green and beat the pants off any other country. Yay! UN Climate Chief Christina Figueres lamented U.S. democracy as very detrimental. And guess what? She lauded China's one-party rule for doing it right on climate. Now you know why we are where we are. Of course, your own Prime Minister, there's a level of admiration I have for China because their basic dictatorship is allowing them to turn their economy around on a dime. What a wonderful thing. Putin is now a climate hero. The United Nations weather chief, the Ukraine war is a blessing. Took a war, this is and also Politico publication, it took a war criminal to speed up Europe's green revolution. And I'm actually talking to people at this conference here in Egypt. They actually believe that Vladimir Putin is quaking in his boots at European, Canadian, and U.S. making even more green commitments that fail. We're going to commit to more. Oh my gosh, Putin must be terrified. They're going to go solar. They won't need my energy. He's laughing his ass off because you got China, Russia, OPEC, Venezuela, all benefiting from this insane doubling down of green energy. Of course, recently the UN, right before the summit actually, the UN declared, we own the science. The world shall know it. We partnered with Google to ensure only UN climate results would appear. Just saying, if anyone's sneaking up behind me, you never know. I'm not very welcome in this country. COVID climate connection. The next crisis is already waiting for us, and it's around the corner. Klaus Schwab. It is the climate crisis. They're telling us what's happening. This is MIT climate scientist Richard Lindzen. It's hard to imagine a better leverage point than carbon dioxide to assume control over a society. It's essential in the production of energy. It's essential to breathing. If you demonize it, gain control, you control everything. So it is a kind of fundamental attractiveness to the bureaucratic mentality. That's frightening because they actually found a better leverage point than carbon dioxide, and that they imagined it, and it's a virus. Climate change, greatest health challenge of the 21st century, threatens all aspects of society. Climate lockdowns, shutting down the whole economy is the only way of limiting global warming to 2 degrees Celsius. This is eerie, and I did not have this last time I talked to you, and I'm about to wrap this up because I have to go, but November 19, 2019, the United Nations demanded that 6 months before the COVID lockdowns happened, that the world needed to cut global emissions 7.6% to meet the UN Paris Agreement. Are you ready for what happened? This is November 2019. Darn it. Fast forward to the end of 2020, 1 year later, carbon dioxide emissions fall 7% in 2020 because of lockdowns. How about that? They said we need to drop it, and it happened. Right when it happened, it's almost like Babe Ruth calling where he's going to hit the baseball. 2021, demands for COVID-like emissions drop. Global lockdowns every 2 years needed to meet the Paris CO2 goals. So there you have it. And of course, 2013, we had Yvo de Boer, the United Nations, say the only way to meet our climate goals is to shut down the economy. So you have, in the United States, Biden is being urged to do a national climate emergency. According to the Washington Post Associated Press, he may be very close to doing that. Biden could declare it. He will trigger 130 new presidential powers if Joe Biden declares a national climate emergency. And this is going to be followed. This is the IEA report, Net Zero urging behavioral changes to fight climate change, shift away from private car use, upper speed limits, thermostat controls, limits on hot water. This is brand new. This is about 3 weeks ago. 3.8 trillion spent for a 1% result that is now evaporated. Goldman Sachs economist Jeff Curry talks about how we invested almost $4 trillion in renewables to lower our fossil fuel use from 82% to 81%. And it's probably bounced back up to 82. Now, how has the climate activists received this news? At this summit, Al Gore is calling, instead of a $4 trillion investment over 10 years, he wants $4 trillion every single year. When faced with unequivocal failure, they double, triple, quadruple, quintuple, and I don't even know what the sextuple, I can't remember, sextuple. Keep going with the money. The more they're faced with failure, the more they believe they just didn't try hard enough. Remember, they always say socialism never failed. It just wasn't done correctly in the Soviet Union or Eastern Europe or Venezuela or Cuba, and they keep listing country after country. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up, but the journal Nature, COVID lockdowns are key to begin carbon allowances. This is where we are with this. It's really scary stuff because the United Nations is here and they're following this whole template. And we have a whole nother week of this conference going. And with that, I want to thank you for this opportunity to address you, to speak to you today. It has been fantastic. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to give you a little shot of Sharm el Shakedown behind me. This is it, the Red Sea right over there. That's Genoa City, giant shopping malls. The people here have been very friendly and nice in terms of the local Egyptians. They love all the economy coming in, all the private jets, all the lavish hotels, all of the vacationing resorters. But I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak. I hope to see you in person real soon. I am not vaccinated, but I think I'm allowed in Canada now, so hopefully the next one I'll be able to appear in person. Thanks, Danny, and thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your conference, and if I don't get out alive, remember, my final parting words to you are very simple. Resist this movement with everything you have. Resist net zero. Net zero is the greatest evil foisted upon humanity in modern times, in recent times. It's very hard to come up with anything in the last decade that is more destructive, or COVID lockdowns. But net zero, this has to be challenged. The narrative, we cannot allow it. It's anti-human. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. And see you all soon.
Thank you, Mark. I think he's in the air. I just sent him a text and I said, if you're if you've landed and you want to ask her a question, call us right away. Before I say anything else, at the moment, there's a Ford Burgundy car with license plate Spark 11, or Spark 111. It's going to be where it's at for about the next 5 minutes, and then they're going to tow it away. So if that's your vehicle, it's not supposed to be there. Is that your vehicle, Gail? Good, okay, thank you. If you better get it moved, that's good. Okay, well, thank you. Thanks to Marc. I wish he was here. What a bunch of hypocrites, aren't they? And you look at this whole, it reminds me of Greta Van Susteren was talking one night on Fox News, and they talk about, like Kath McKenna lost, hundreds of billions of dollars, and, found $20 a trucker had spent. But you look at the money that's wasted. But Greta said she was in India, and she went into a store, and she bought something and put it on her American Express card. And, went to walk out, and as she was walking out, she saw something else she liked, and so she bought something else, and then that was fine. She headed out and again saw something else that she liked, so she went back to buy it, and her card was denied. And then she got a text message from American Express and said, your card was just used 3 times in 10 minutes in the store in India, like, is that you? I mean, she said she had to embarrassingly text back and say, yes, it's me, I'm quite undecided about what I want to buy. But the point is, like, they have the technology to turn off your credit card on virtually, every transaction every transaction we make. So in any event, that's, I guess we're not going to have a question and answer with Marc, so we're going to take a break till 1:55, and then we're going to have Barbara Kay talking about the transgender agenda. So thank you very much. We'll be back to work at 1:55. Thank you.